You mentioned another topic that comes up a lot for people in my community, or question, I guess, that comes up, and it's around this topic of raising capital. You mentioned that you've raised tens of millions of dollars just since 2018. What advice do you have? It feels daunting just to raise money for your first deal, even if it's $100,000. What advice do you have for people who are just getting started trying to raise money?
Well, it is daunting. I have when I did my first raise, I had over 25 years of experience and had built a couple $100,000 worth of stuff. And so I didn't lack track record, but I didn't have that process totally figured out. I didn't have a group of investors. I hadn't really cultivated that culture around me. And Kirby, my first raise was $1.8 million, and it took me 4.5 months, right? So for those of you out there that are struggling, I did too. And at the time, I think we had $27 million worth of construction under contract, right? It wasn't a big deal, and it was a little $4 million project, right? So at the end of the day, the thing you've got to have is you've got to understand what you're going for, right? If you're looking at raising capital, you need to let people understand what you're trying to do, and you need to look at what problem are you trying to solve. And it's not one of those situations where all your investors are going to fit into one deal, right? The one thing that we lead with is we lead with education, and we lead with an investor first attitude. So when we talk with an investor and we find out what they want and how they want to do it and what things are going to be appropriate for them and how it's going to work, we want to make sure that what they're looking for fits what we offer. If not, we're going to help them understand what might be and who might be someone else for that. But it's also about educating people. When people understand, when you're having the conversation, you're talking with a buddy, and it's the end of April and he just paid an enormous amount of taxes, and you're starting the conversation about how to avoid that and how real estate investment, passive investing works for that. You're beginning to build that audience. And as I've learned, you've got to build the audience first. You can't build the audience on Saturday and then go to them on Sunday or Monday back at the office and say, hey, I got a real estate deal. You've got to get people to understand what you're doing. You've got to show them those things. And if you lead with education, it's going to do two really strong things for you. One is it's going to show them that you understand what you're doing. You're investing your own money. You're doing your own deals. You're making things happen. And number two, it's going to help you down the road once the investment's going, because it's really going to have established that trust, and it's really going to eliminate a lot of the questions that are going to clog your pipeline. Because it's one thing to bring 10 people in on a deal, but you've done that 5 times now, and now you've got 50 people that are wanting a piece of your time because they have a question for you, right? Hey, what about this? This isn't quite going right. And when you're looking at that, the easiest way to do that is to educate them. And, it's amazing how when you're coming to people and you're talking about, this is how I'm lowering my tax bill. This is how I'm preparing my exit from my W-2. This is how I'm, avoiding taxes. This is how I'm utilizing my 401k. It blows me away how few people know that you can take your 401k or your IRA and you can self-direct it in real estate, right?
Yeah.
So there's so many opportunities there. And if you really just take the time to educate, it'll take 4 or 5 months, right? But through that first raise, I spent 4.5 months doing it, but then I realized what my problem was. And once I solved that, then the next raise we did was not as painful. And I think within a year and a half of the first raise, we raised $11.5 million in a matter of a week.
Wow. Yeah. I think what I've seen is a lot of people approach it, to your point, more transactional. Like, I've got this deal, now I'm going to go raise money today, instead of it being relationship based and building that relationship, like you mentioned, over time. Yeah.
I've got an investor. We call him $100,000 Rob. If he listens to this, he knows that's what we call him. He is my first $100,000 in every deal, right? But when I took the time to educate him, and he took the time to really understand what we were doing and how we could help him, and he saw the returns on the first deal, if we're not calling him, he's calling us, going, hey, what do you got for a deal, right? And so when you lay that groundwork, People think they need to go find the deal first, and I don't think that's true. I think you need to find your audience first. I think you need to find your investors first. And the easiest way to do that is put together a one sheet, just like you've got a deal, right? Take a minute, sit down, go through what is a likely deal for you. What are you considering to be just a sweet spot deal? It's in this market, it's this product. I'm going to do this to it. It's going to take this long. Returns are looking like this over a 3 to 5 year window. Put that out there. And then go talk to your people once you've started to educate them. Hey, this is what I'm doing. Just so you know, this is my pro forma. This is how this works. This is what this does. These are the tax returns or the tax benefits that I would have. And this is how I would exit. And, just so you can have that and then come back to them and go, is that something you'd be interested in? I mean, that's pretty simple, right? And the general partner does all the heavy lifting and, oh yeah, that sounds really good. Well, if you were to invest in something like that, how much do you think you'd want to put into it? And create a list, right? You literally create a list. You've got a spreadsheet, right? John's in for 100 grand. Sally's in for 100 and a quarter. And you've got a list. And when you've got a list that's twice the size of what you think your first down payment's going to be, your first capital raise is going to be, you're probably right about there, because 50% of the people will and 50% of the people won't. But if you're looking to raise $1 million and you've got a list with 2 million on it, I'm really certain you can get between 9 and 1.2 out of that list. But the problem is people go out and they get the deal and then they scramble around in this terrified manner, and you don't know if it's a hostage negotiation or a fundraise, right?
Yeah.
and then people wind up using all that energy because it is transactional instead of creating those relationships at the time that it really works.
Yeah. So powerful, because people can do that today, even if they've never done a deal. Just
absolutely
create that and start building that list of potential investors. That's great advice.
Again, Kirby, when you think about a team, right? Let's say that you've been able to do that and you still can't find a deal, right? Let's say that you're new to the audience, new to real estate investing, and you're still struggling to find a deal. There are people out there that don't have a problem finding the deal. They have a problem finding the money. And if their deal lines up with what you're looking for, you can help them. You can partner with them. And in that space, you've now created a solution where you're building a team member. Now you've got twice as many eyes looking at the deal, twice as many people looking for a deal. You've got their track record, their resume, their experience, right? I'm working with a partner that's got 10 years in the biz and they've been doing this, and these are all the things they've done. All of that stuff is very important, and it puts you in a place where you can be mentored live action, right? Real time. Yeah. I mean, this is where you get boots on the ground, and you got invited to the party instead of being the kid bouncing around in the back going, hey, let me see what's going on. Hey, and it's much cheaper than paying for masterminds.
Yeah. I wish I had done that so much more early on, because I looked through such a narrow lens, but you can leverage other people and you're giving them such an opportunity, similar to the scenario you mentioned at the beginning with the crane operator and the woman that wanted to sell the land. You're just marrying two needs together, and you get compensated for that and learn a whole bunch at the same time.
Right, exactly.
So, amazing. There's a lot of investors, I think, that are fully focused on these value add deals, whether it's the Burr model with the single family home or it's a 100-unit apartment complex. Similar similar fundamentals where you're fixing something up, adding value to it, and then the overall value, you're creating equity in the property. So I think you've mentioned that you have a different take. You don't necessarily just focus on value add, and in some instances, new construction makes more sense. Can you kind of explain why that is?
Well, Kirby, let's define that. I do believe in value add, but in new construction, I am the original value add, right? I mean, if you looked at it and you came to me, let's take the industrial facility we're doing in Florida, right? If you came to me and said, hey, Shannon, I want you to build me 40,000 square feet with X, Y, and Z in it, big parking lot, all this kind of stuff right here, I would tell you we'd do that for you for $4.5 million. We went out, we found the tenant, we put that in there, we created the cash stream on it, we did all those things. Now the project's worth $6.5 million, right? So my investors are able to participate in some instant upside once the project is done, and we're in a position to then create cash flow. And the thing that I see is there's the world's a pyramid too, right? And some people say it's a pyramid scheme because the people at the top keep using the people underneath. But let's say that there's 100,000 people out there doing the BRRRR strategy on single family, right? Well, then there's 25,000 people that are doing that BRRRR strategy on fourplexes. And there's 10,000 that are doing it on 100-unit apartment complexes. But there's only 1,000 of us developers. And so as you continue to step up, you rarefy the air and there's less competition. The thing, when you're looking at a development, they really want to look at track record. They really want to look at balance sheet. They really want to see that you've got the experience to pull this off. Because unlike a value add, the bank underwrites the existing cash flow. And they say, okay, Kirby, we don't really trust you, but if you screw up, the worst you can do is X. And then we can salvage that because there's actually a product that's for rent. When they look at me, they go, we're trusting you with a piece of land and a lot of money. Yeah. And we're expecting to come back in 24 months and have this done. And so there's a difference there. But the other side of that is when you look at the expenses on new construction, right? So in a value add, you're typically running 38 to 42% expenses. In new construction, you're running 28 to 31%, right? So when you're running in this environment of inflation eating everything, you're going to get to razor thin margins. And that's really hard to do on a 1973 model. I mean, I'm a 1973 model. There's a lot of rehab that needs to be done here, buddy. You know,
so you're talking about because maintenance costs are just so much lower.
Maintenance costs and what's getting expensive, right? I mean, the maintenance guy is needing more money now because fuel's $7 in California. Yeah. The paint is becoming more expensive. All of the things that go in to keep repairing it. Or if you're getting brand new, you're getting warranties, you're getting new furnaces, you're getting, new dishwashers, you're getting, plus when you look at nationwide, the C and D class property statistically is taking between 38 and 45% of their gross income for rent. In the A class property, it's 26%. Delinquencies are climbing in the C and D class properties. They're not near that in the A class properties. So you're looking at different products, and there's a book. If I remember correctly, 2x is or 10x is easier than 2x. And it's so true because you're able to look, if you can raise $1 million, you can buy this property, right? But if you can figure out how to 2x or 10x that, you can buy this property, which is actually going to take less time and effort. It's going to take the same amount of time and effort to underwrite and get it done, but it's going to take less time and effort to deal with it, to manage it. Plus, when you're dealing with A-class properties, you're dealing with newer product, you're dealing with a different buyer. You're dealing with a REIT. You're dealing with, somebody that wants to buy it, hold it long term. They're willing to pay more. They understand the game, and you're not necessarily you're not working with Main Street. You're working with Wall Street. So your exit's going to be a little bit sweeter, and you did the same amount of work. In fact, you probably did less work, which frees you up to do it again. And if you can't raise 10x your money, find 10 people that can raise your money, right? I mean, it's really about breaking it down. And I think that that's so imperative for people to look at, is that you can take your specialty, work with somebody else who has a different specialty. You can put something together. Syndication and investing it can be a team sport, and it can be done very, very well because you're able to utilize people's expertise that then shows you why they're a professional, why they're really good at it, why they're the best option for you, and you can move forward in a fashion that really gives you a better result than you could produce yourself and the opportunity to move faster. I mean, Kirby, it's this simple. Would you rather have the whole pie or one piece of 10 pies?